This is the NBA strategy show for the Christmas Day NBA slate. What a day to talk about some Christmas Day NBA. Joining alongside with me is Ship My Money DFS. Adam, Merry Christmas to you. And also Merry Christmas to all you viewers who are joining us today. We hope you guys are having a fantastic holiday. And you guys make Stokastic so special. It's the viewers, it's the audience. So hit that like button for us. But Adam, Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, man. Excited to be doing this show. Christmas Day basketball is one of my favorite sporting days.
Yeah, it's really, honestly, Christmas Day NBA is like the kickoff the NBA season. Like the real season begins now. Everyone is looking forward to this date. They mark this on their calendar. It's like the NBA's day. And now I think the NBA playoff races or whatever will heat up. The trade rumors will heat up. And this is going to be exciting final stretch of NBA as we head into the playoffs. Only about 4 months away, but it'll come by fast. But we got a 5-game slate. I mean, a lot of loaded studs on the slate. Some studs are injured. Obviously, Curry and Anthony Davis are hurt, but you have so many healthy studs, and it makes for an awesome slate in terms of DFS. Some exciting top-heavy price pools, as usual on this Christmas Day slate. But do you approach Christmas Day NBA any differently than like other slates because of how much it's staggered? It's like from 12 to 10 p.m. Eastern, there's a 10-hour gap between the first game and the last game. Does this change the way you approach the slate whatsoever?
No, I just prepare myself more to be nagged at and bitched at for having to late swap throughout the day. But yeah, as far as the way I play, nothing changes.
No, for sure. I definitely think early information is a huge advantage in any sort of DFS. And like you can adjust your lineups. If you had some low on players who've popped off and over exceed their expectations, I do think that puts you in an opportunity to play more chalkier players if you nail the right low-owned players in your lineup. So it gives us a little bit more of some time, I guess, to give yourself the optimization of your lineups throughout the day. But
yeah, when you late swap, you're late swapping with more information than normal.
Yeah, no, definitely here. But first game on the slate, we got the Sixers taking on the Knicks at the Garden. And obviously on the Sixers side of things, Embiid and Harden balled out last time. And we've been doing these shows over the last couple of weeks. It's usually been Embiid and Harden and kind of move on situation. And it doesn't feel any different today as Embiid and Harden come in both 11-4 and 9-7 on DraftKings and then 11-6 and 9-4 on FanDuel. I definitely think they're awesome tournament plays. I know it's one of the lower totals on the slate, but low-owned studs potentially with huge upsides. I like going to both of these guys. Talk to me about Embiid and Harden.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they both have really, really high ceilings here. You have Embiid coming in at 9%, Harden coming in at 14%. I do think Harden's going to be the easier one to get to just because he is a couple $1,000s less expensive than Embiid. And you do have a star-studded slate here. So, you know, we have LeBron playing without Davis. We have Luka playing. We have Giannis playing. We have Morant playing. You have Jokic playing. So there is a ton of opportunity cost when you pay up. I think it is going to be kind of difficult to get to Embiid here because, one, he's a center, and then two, you have those other guys, and three, this should be a slow-paced game. Both of these teams are bottom 10 in pace this year. The Knicks have allowed the third fewest points in the paint this year as well. You know, again, when you're talking about somebody like Embiid, that only matters so much because if they played Joel Embiid every game, they wouldn't allow the third fewest points in the paint. But, you know, they are a solid interior defense in addition to being a slow-paced team. That all just makes it, I think, relatively difficult for me to get to Embiid. That being said, though, you know, it's when you're talking tournaments, you're thinking range of outcomes just as much, if not more so, than median projections. And Embiid clearly still has that ceiling. He's playing huge minutes, should give you 36 plus here. So clearly he's always going to be a good play, but I think he's pretty difficult to get to on this slate. I think it's going to be easier for me to get to Harden because he's just, you know, has better positional flexibility and he's a bit less expensive.
Yeah, I think these guys obviously have tournament winning upside, but let's talk about the second tier guys and your Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton, and some other guys who are getting some ownership are guys like Niang, and Niang's definitely getting some double-digit ownership where you get that 3-point bonus at $3,300. I'm a little skeptical with a guy like him. Obviously, he's very 3-point dependent to pay that off. Do you have any interest in getting above the field on any one of these secondary, tertiary Sixer players?
No, I don't really see it, especially with the ownership coming in. If I went to one, the way things look right now, it would probably be Melton at 6,200. You're likely to get around 34 minutes from him. Obviously, as a starter playing alongside Harden and Embiid, his usage rate is very low. In the games he started this year with them active, he has a 16.5% usage rate. But he does rebound pretty well. He does, you know, get peripherals. So if he's going to play 34 minutes at 6,200 and low ownership, there's some merit to getting there. But, you know, again, not something I'm excited about. Same can be said for Harris. It's kind of just a minutes play. You know, he's got like a 17.5, 18% usage rate. But he's going to play, big minutes. He averages around 35. He played 39 last game. So you certainly could get enough minutes for him to be a viable option, but not excited for either guy. And the ownership on Yang makes no sense to me. We have him projected for 13.5 DraftKings points. I have him at 14. I get that he's 3,300 and this is a slate where we'd like to pay up for some guys. If he were getting like 2% ownership, I could see saying, oh, well, hopefully PJ Tucker gets in foul trouble and Yang plays 25 minutes and then plays well. But if 12% of the field's going to be there, I see really no reason to be doing that.
I definitely feel that same sentiment as you do about Niang. But one thing about Niang, I guess the one way he can definitely pay off is getting hot from the outside. But here comes the 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 George Niang Christmas Day special, right? So,
right. I mean, it's more like, can Niang end up being a good play at 3,300? Sure, because like you said, if he plays 20 minutes, he can just knock down he can shoot 100% from three, knock down 4 threes, end up scoring 20 DraftKings points, and he looks like a good play. It's just that there's no real incentive for me to try and get the 100% shooting George Niang game when if 10+% people are going to be there, I would rather just enjoy the rake-free tournament when George Niang hits his median projection.
Yeah, no, definitely here. I think that's something that we can definitely pivot off the field, in my opinion, as well. Any final thoughts on the Sixers team as we move on to the Knicks?
Nope.
All right. If everyone can hit that like button for us, that'd be fantastic. But before we talk about this like button, I want to give a special shout out to No House Advantage. They have one of the biggest Christmas Day tournaments out there. There's a lot of potential overlay. Producer Mike, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's at least 10K, or if I had heard it might have been 20K to first, I believe, for this Christmas Day slate. So feel free to drop that link in the chat for us. Take advantage of that deposit match bonus. Okay, it's all right. But take advantage of our sponsor there, and it's going to be a great tournament. And we also have an NHA lineup builder that you should take advantage of. But onto the Knicks side we go. They were one of the hottest teams in the league until they lost on a buzzer beater by DeMar DeRozan the other night. It's the Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson show, but RJ Barrett did drop, I believe, a career high 44 last night in that loss. But it's kind of their big three plus Mitch Robb, who's certainly on the table here. This whole team, yet again, is getting a lot of ownership. It's kind of been the tale of this week with this Knicks team just consistently getting ownership here. Randall comes in at 9,100 as Brunson comes in at 7,300. I like going to those two guys. A little more bearish on RJ Barrett tonight. Mitchell Robinson's going to need to be out there as long as he can, staying out of foul trouble against Embiid, but he comes in at 5,200 and $5,900 on FanDuel. Certainly can get there with the block upside, and if he's going to play around 30 minutes, there's certainly a ceiling for Mitchell Robinson. This Knicks starters certainly are getting some ownership here. Do you have a preference of getting one over the other, or it's kind of a stay away situation with this low pace environment? You're certainly getting ownership a lot more than the Sixers team.
Yeah, I mean, you're just getting so many minutes for these guys. So I think it's, Randall and Brunson being the first two that I'll get to. Julius Randle's price tag dropped $600 since last game, so he's back to this price range where it's pretty easy to get to him. Assuming this game's competitive, you're likely getting 37 plus minutes. He's, of course, a very good point per minute player. Jalen Brunson's been playing a lot more minutes recently as well. Like, if you look at his season averages, he's around 32, 33 minutes per game, but no Derrick Rose in the rotation anymore. You have Obi Toppin out, which doesn't directly impact Brunson, but it does, kind of shift some minutes that way and makes it easier for Brunson to play big minutes. So I think projecting around 35 minutes for Brunson here makes sense. We could certainly see more from him. So, it's a slow-paced game, but I do think that those two look really good. RJ Barrett, I get it because he's just playing so many minutes. He's been shooting a bit better recently as well, obviously coming off of a massive game his last time out. But in competitive games, you're just getting 39, 40 minutes, if not more from him. So on a 5-game slate where, small forward's typically not the strongest position, I think Barrett probably just falls into some lineups and looks pretty good. The 22% ownership does concern me a bit, but I think it's probably just a situation where you're going to find that, once you start building lineups, it's just like, oh, well, RJ Barrett just fits here and there's not a lot else I can do. So if that's the case, I'm fine with it just because of how many minutes he's going to play. And then the center position, pulling ownership as well. Mitchell Robinson, if he avoids foul trouble, should give you around 30 minutes. He's averaging about 29 minutes per game in these games without Obi Toppin. If he does get in foul trouble, you get more run for Isaiah Hartenstein. But even if you just project this game to kind of go according to the averages, and you get 29 minutes for Robinson, you get about 19 for Hartenstein, they both look like good options because Robinson's only coming in at 5,200. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. You knock a little bit off of that because of the pace, but Still makes him look, still gives him a projection right around 5x, which is going to get him into some lineups. And then Hartenstein, if he plays 19 minutes at 3,200 on DraftKings, projects for 17 to 18 DraftKings points. We have him at 16 because we have him playing a couple minutes less than I do. But either way, like we just talked about Jordan Yang getting 12% ownership at 3,300, kind of tells you how starved for value you are, or for cheap value rather, on this slate. 3,200 for Hartenstein, I think makes a lot of sense as well. You are giving up a center position for a 22% owned backup. So like that is not an ideal situation, but I think he's just going to be a pretty useful piece here.
Yeah, I think it's definitely viable taking some chances on a guy like Hartenstein. There's a couple pathways he can pay off a very low price tag here. But we need to talk about Miles McBride. If we didn't like the Georges and Niang ownership, what the hell do we do with Miles McBride at this ownership? McBride comes in at $3,300 on DraftKings. He's not getting that much ownership on FanDuel. It's a little different over there. But man, McBride coming in with a decent amount of ownership, I don't want to go there.
Refresh your ownership. We have him at 0.1%.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what happened.
What did we have him at?
Oh my God, 20%.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't really want him at 0.1. I definitely wouldn't want him at 20.
Okay. Yeah, I know that definitely changes things up there. But any final thoughts on this Knicks team before we move on?
No, I don't think so. I guess like the other two guys to mention are Quentin Grimes and Quickly. They're not the price tags aren't very appealing, but you are getting big minutes for Quentin Grimes. He is only 9% owned. Should play around 34 minutes. Again, not a great, not an exciting option, not a great option, but he's kind of, I guess, like a 5K version of DeAnthony Melton, where I'm not excited to get there, but at low ownership and given how many minutes he's likely to play, at least there's some chance that he gets there. And then Quickly, outside of the game he started, you have seen the minutes down a bit for him, but if you were to get Brunson foul trouble or Quickly just gets hot off the bench, there is at least a path to success for him. So neither guy is very high probability, but I guess they are at least worth mentioning because they are two Knicks that are going to play at least reasonable minutes and actually aren't getting much ownership.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely an option there. Now, with Miles McBride, with the new projected 0.1 ownership, is it worth taking some chances there?
I still don't see it. Like, I have him playing 14 minutes. I have him for like 9 DraftKings points. For McBride to end up being somebody you wanted, you probably need like a legit injury to Grimes or Quickly or Barrett. And like, I'm not making DFS lineups hoping somebody sprains an ankle in the first quarter.
No, agreed there. On to the Lakers and Dallas side we go. The Lakers are underdogs. Going to Dallas, they are 7.5-point underdogs with a 231.5 total, tied for the highest on the slate. And therefore, it's going to be an much more interesting DFS slate with a lot more options, in my opinion, here. Obviously, LeBron James on Christmas Day. He's playing on Christmas Day pretty much every single year. It's LeBron comes in at a very favorable 10-5 and 11K without Anthony Davis. I like going to LeBron James quite a bit yet again in this Dallas spot. Other guys who are worth taking some flyers on, obviously Thomas Bryant soaking up a lot of those minutes there. He's priced up now, $5,600 and $6,100 on FanDuel. I certainly think with one center spot on FanDuel, you can certainly, if you want to spend down to him, he certainly is showing the ability to put up nice fantasy points. But then we got to talk about the backcourt situation. Dennis Schroeder, Russell Westbrook. Both of these guys are awesome tournament options, in my opinion. But it's LeBron James and then everyone else in this situation. Maybe Thomas Bryant deserves that ownership. How do you feel about this Lakers team as they continue to play without Anthony Davis? We've seen the rotation pan out now with Russell Westbrook returning the other night. How do you envision this to go today?
Yeah, so Bryant, I think, is the guy I get to first here, just coming in at 5,600. I projected him for 30 minutes, but realistically, he could go even higher than that. We saw about 33 minutes from him last game. He also got hurt at the end of that game. So it's not like the Lakers intentionally closed without him. He hurt his shoulder. He went to the locker room, and they ended up closing with the smaller lineup. But I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, you were probably getting like 36 minutes there. I still go 30, just even though we've seen more minutes recently, just because there is still foul risk. You do have Wenyen and Gabriel back, and we don't know exactly how. At some point, does he start, kind of eating into to Thomas Bryant's minutes a bit? We haven't really seen like the bad Thomas Bryant game and how quickly he gets yanked. So I still just go to 30 minutes on him, which still makes him project very well at this price tag. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. He rebounds well, so being a mid-teens usage guy with LeBron on the floor isn't that concerning. He just looks really good at 5,600 and very easy to get to. Patrick Beverley has been playing more minutes recently, and I expect that to continue as long as he avoids foul trouble. He's 3,700 projected for 30% ownership. Anytime you're going to get a 30% owned Patrick Beverley, that is terrifying because the guy's got a sub 10% usage rate. You're just hoping he's out there and avoids foul trouble. You're hoping that he knocks down the wide open threes that he gets and then runs into some steals. But at 3,700 on a slate where there are a lot of guys that we want to pay up for, I understand why he's getting ownership. Same can be said for Wenyen Gabriel. Same can be said for Austin Reeves. Reeves should play around 28 minutes off the bench. Gabriel should play 16 to 20 off the bench. He's only 3,200 with power forward eligibility, so he's just going to fit into some lineups pretty nicely. He's kind of like Isaiah Hartenstein for me, where I hate playing him at this ownership, but on a slate where guys like George Niang are pulling ownership, I'm going to just end up getting to Gabriel first. Then you kind of get to LeBron, which, is weird because obviously he's much better than all of those guys. But $10,500 price tag for LeBron against a slow-paced Dallas team. He obviously has a very, very high ceiling. You could get the narrative play here too, where, it's a Christmas Day game, LeBron against Luka. If he played a couple more minutes, nobody should be surprised. If he looks to be more aggressive and take over earlier, nobody should be more surprised or should be surprised. Like, for example, last game, he kind of was doing nothing. And then you get to the fourth quarter and he just scores like 18 actual points in the fourth quarter because it's the fourth quarter and LeBron James is like, all right, well, I'm just going to go score a bunch of points now. If you just see him and Luka kind of play one-on-one for the whole game, that wouldn't be shocking. We've seen it before. There was a game, it was pre-COVID, so I think it was 2019. I just still remember because it was one of the most fun games, regular season games I've watched, where like LeBron and Luka just the entire fourth quarter were guarding each other and nobody else was touching the ball, and it was just like really, really fun. So like you have those sort of narratives here too, where LeBron certainly has a very, very, very high ceiling, but you do have a lot of other guys to pay up for as well. So I think the 15% ownership makes sense. Westbrook at 7,400, pulling 7% ownership. That's an interesting tournament play to me, just because, he only played around 24, 25 minutes last game, but you always have those, 30-minute games possible for Westbrook off the bench. And he is a very, very good point per minute guy in his bench role and playing without Anthony Davis on the floor. So at low ownership, do have some interest there as well.
No, I think this Lakers team makes for an excellent tournament team across the board here. And I think there'll be a key to unlocking the slate. I think if we can nail which of those players outside of LeBron are going to pop off, is it going to be the Brian who carries that ownership? Is it going to be Lonnie Walker, or is it going to be Schroeder? Because I do think those minutes can be volatile across the board. We'll see what that ends up looking like come of the end of the game here. But onto the Dallas side we go, and this Dallas team going to also catch a lot of ownership taking on this Lakers side of the matchup. Luka. It's Luka's show here, 12-5 and 11-8 on DraftKings and FanDuel. He looks a solid option. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of interest in him. The one thing that makes it difficult for Luka is the value we've touched on. There's not that much great sub 4K value until maybe you want to take some chances here on this Dallas team. And the guy who's getting that ownership might be Reggie Bullock, who comes in, I believe Reggie Bullock is $4,100 here. But the rest of this Dallas team, I think, is getting appropriate ownership, that being Dinwiddie, that being Christian Wood, and Tim Hardaway Jr. here. I like this matchup for them, and I think it's worthwhile getting over the field on some of these players. How do you feel about Luka and the rest of the Mavs? Luka being one of the lower-owned guys on this team, depending on the site, but how do you feel about targeting guys like Dinwiddie, Hardaway Jr.? I think the matchup's fantastic.
Yeah, I like Dallas here as well. Doncic in particular. I mean, I've said on a lot of slates recently where like it's difficult for me to get to a 12-5 Luka, and it is tough with the value today. But Luka just looks so good to me in this spot because one, it's a favorable matchup against the Lakers. You have a very healthy 119 implied total for Dallas, which I believe is tied with Memphis for the highest on the slate. But the other thing is how many minutes Luka's likely to play here, because Dallas is shorthanded, and I know I talked about it before the last game. They're not missing guys that are really DFS viable, so I think it's going a little bit overlooked. But no Maxi Kleber, that's 26 minutes a game taken out. No Dorian Finney-Smith, that's like 30 minutes. No Josh Green, that's your like primary guard/wing backup who is playing like 22 minutes. No Kemba Walker, who is basically the Josh Green backup. So while it's not DFS it's not guys that you'd be playing in DFS. It's just opening up so many minutes. And we saw it last game where, Luka played about 18 minutes in the first half, but then did not leave the floor the entire second half, ended up playing 42 minutes. I think expecting around 38 from him here is very, very reasonable given how shorthanded they are, because the alternative is that they're giving Luka's minutes to guys like Jaden Hardy if he's in, or Theo Pinson, or, McKinley Wright. It's not like they have, Frank Ntilikina. They don't have any competent backups for Luka Doncic here. So I think he's playing huge minutes. If this game does blow out, clearly there's a very, very good chance that Luka is the reason. So not overly concerned there. I think, especially at only 20% ownership, I'm probably going to end up prioritizing getting Luka into lineups today and just, kind of spreading it around with cheap value, hoping to get lucky somewhere else. As far as the rest of this team, Spencer Dinwiddie at 6,500, pulling 30% ownership. I played a ton of him last slate at 8%, and he was absolutely awful. So I'm fully expecting him to just go nuts here. The reason to like Dinwiddie is that he also is likely to play more minutes. We got 41 minutes from him 2 games ago. We got 37.5 minutes from him last game. I think projecting around 36 minutes makes sense. The downside for Dinwiddie is that Luka playing more minutes means fewer minutes where Dinwiddie's playing without Luka, and Dinwiddie needs those minutes. If you look at Dinwiddie's rates with and without Luka on the floor this year, huge difference in usage, huge difference in assist percentage. Not surprising at all that you see that. But another negative is that Christian Wood is starting now, or at least we're expecting him to start. He started the last game. Christian Wood's a much higher usage guy than Dwight Powell. So if you're expecting most of the minutes that Dinwiddie's on the floor with Luka to also have Christian Wood, that drives his usage rate down even more. You should still get around 10 minutes or so where he's on the floor without Luka. The playing time makes Dinwiddie still look like a good play, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that those rates do come down a little bit because Luka's playing more minutes and because Christian Wood is playing alongside Luka and Dinwiddie more often. But still, 6,500 on this slate looks like a solid option. Christian Wood at 4%. If that's going to hold, I love him in tournaments. The playing time is certainly volatile. He played 28 minutes last game despite starting. He had some foul issues, but also I'm not sure that directly impacted his playing time. For example, he had 3 fouls in the first half, but he picked up his third foul with 8.5 minutes to go in the second quarter. He didn't sub out until there were 5 minutes and 43 seconds left. It probably cost him a couple of minutes there, but I don't think it was necessarily that they didn't immediately take him out. He also wasn't playing particularly well. If he's playing well and avoiding fouls, you certainly can get 34 plus minutes from Wood, but you also have those games where he's going to play 28. So I think the playing time's volatile, but power forward eligible, 7,900, only pulling 4% ownership. That's a really interesting tournament option to me. Tim Hardaway Jr. at 5,300, pulling 36%. That seems a little bit high just because, again, he's contending with Christian Wood and Luka for usage, but he's likely to give you around 32 minutes as well. He's cheap, so the ownership makes some sense. Dwight Powell at 4% ownership, no confidence there, but if Christian Wood plays poorly or gets in foul trouble, you should get more minutes for Powell. So using him as, a contrarian cheap guy to fit in Luka makes some sense. But I think building around Luka is where I'll be at. Getting to some Hardaway, Dinwiddie, Christian Wood, all those guys look pretty good as well.
Yeah, it's a solid, obviously, great matchup and tournament team to take some chances on across the board. Click that like button for us. Also, thank you to Super Chat from DC24, $1.99 Super Chat. Would you play Brian and Gabriel together?
That's a good question. I've kind of been thinking about it, and I'm not sure. I think so. So it's only a 5-game slate. We don't have a ton of value. Bryant is priced at a point where if he only plays 30 minutes, I still think he's a good play. So, and if Gabriel played 18 minutes, I would think he was a good play. But also, they are playing minutes alongside each other. They did last game, and they have in the past. So, the dream scenario for Gabriel is certainly that Thomas Bryant gets in immediate foul trouble, and they just go to Gabriel. But I think there's ways this game can play out where you get 22 minutes for Gabriel and 30 for Bryant, and they both just end up looking good anyway. So I'm fine playing them both together. I prefer to find ways not to, but just with the way the slate looks and the fact they will play minutes next to each other, I don't mind just having them in the same lineup.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll fall on them in the same lineup. Regardless, we'll see. I haven't built any lineups yet, so it'll be an interesting situation up to lock. I don't have any issues. It also depends on who else you can get into your lineup, in my opinion. So
yeah. Oh, good. I'll say like the way I'm thinking about it kind of is like, let's say I have this lineup built, I have Thomas Bryant, and I'm just trying to figure out what like $3,300 wing to put in. Even if we assume Thomas Bryant has a good game, I don't think that necessarily makes Niang better than Gabriel because Gabriel still can get the minutes regardless of what Thomas Bryant's doing, and Gabriel can play those minutes alongside Bryant. So like, I don't want to set a rule on it because I think that even if Thomas Bryant plays well, Wenyan Gabriel's likely to beat, or just as likely to beat Niang or these other shitty value plays.
No, agreed. And I think that's something to keep an eye on up until lineup builds up there. If you want to take advantage of some lineup builds, take advantage of our 3-day free trial that we have at the site. We have Lineup Generator for free. That's an exciting new tool that we've put together to help enhance your lineup building process and seeing what simulations of the stochastic process will look like, and kind of you can custom build to what you really want. Your lineups look like it's chalky, contrarian. So take advantage of that free 3-day trial. And we're not sure how much longer this is going to last, but you might as well take advantage of it tonight. There's some NFL that's happening later in a couple hours. Big tournaments over there. And NBA Christmas Day throughout the day. So definitely take advantage of that situation. On to Milwaukee and Boston.
Hang on, one other thing I wanted to mention. If you are someone that wants to play guys like George Niang and just hope they shoot lights out from three, Davis Bertans is basically the same play. Projects for a couple minutes less, but it's the same thing. Bertans is probably going to play 16 to 18 minutes. His job is to shoot threes. If he knocks them down, then he's going to be a good play at 3K. If he doesn't, he's going to be awful. So he's just another one at 7%. Where like if you're taking my approach, or the approach at least that I expect to take, I haven't built lineups, and just finding ways to get Luka in, Bertans is another piece that helps you do that potentially.
Yeah, Bertans obviously 3-point bonus definitely certainly helps him over there on DraftKings. Don't mind sprinkling some of him in there. He's getting a little bit of ownership, I believe.
Like
so a little bit of ownership. So definitely worth taking some chances on. But here we go to Milwaukee and Boston. Milwaukee and Boston obviously rematch of the semifinals last year where it went to 7 games. Chris Middleton remains out with a knee injury situation. So it's the Giannis and Drew show here. Giannis obviously is going to look like a stud to pay up for 12-4 and 12K. He's coming in with low ownership yet again. And it's been Giannis. He's been coming in low on consistently over this past week. I like taking some chances on Giannis, even at this low ownership. I think I'll get to him above the field here. Maybe I'll also get to some of Drew Holiday, but this whole Milwaukee team is not getting much ownership across the board. Talking about Giannis specifically, because he's such a focal point of this team and usually a focal point of DFS, but of late it hasn't felt like that. And I like taking some chances on him tonight in this Boston spot. Yeah,
I mean, I like that he's getting 6% ownership here. Given how high I am on Luka, I think I will probably have trouble getting to Giannis, but that's kind of like a me problem. I think that, if you can build lineups that have Giannis, that's a really good play at 6%. He's been playing big minutes recently, and this is a game that should be relatively competitive. Boston's 6-point favorites at home, but it's likely you get Giannis playing big minutes. This is a difficult matchup for him, but the upside there, you clearly can't deny it. And on a 5% or on a 5-game slate, getting 6% ownership, going to Giannis is going to be nice. I still think I'm likely to have a big enough gap in my projection between him and Luka that I just get to more Luka unless the ownership gap gets even wider. But Giannis, clearly one of the best point per minute guys. He has forward eligibility, which is nice as well. Probably going to be a little bit easier to get into lineups on FanDuel, I would think. That's normally the case. He's small forward, power forward there at only 12K, so 13% ownership compared to 6 on DraftKings. I'll probably get my Giannis exposure on FanDuel today and end up just jamming Luka on DraftKings, but I wouldn't fault anyone for going to a low-owned Giannis on DraftKings.
Yeah, and I definitely like that 12K price tag on FanDuel a decent amount as well. I think it's worth getting over the field over there, the way the pricing works out, and the lineup positionality as well. But Drew Holiday, Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez. Bobby Portis hasn't been as impressive with Brook Lopez back in the picture compared to last year. Any other interest in any of these other Bucks players? I like getting some going to Drew in some spots here, but this Bucks team seems like the ownership is appropriate. Some good tournament options, obviously, but it's tough for guys to get there when you're playing alongside Giannis.
Yeah, and also just it's tough when they're playing at Boston. You have Dallas playing against the Lakers. You have this Memphis Golden State game that should be a fast-paced just shit show. You have, Phoenix playing at Denver. Like there's just spots that are more appealing. But I do think from a tournament standpoint, Milwaukee offers some pivots. So like not guys that I'm building around, but within individual lineups, there's guys that at their ownership look like good ways to be different. For example, Drew Holiday, 8,100 getting 13% ownership. I think for $1,000 less, Jalen Brunson is clearly a better play, but he's getting 3 times the ownership. So, in a lineup, if that $1,000, if you can make like a 2v2, like let's say you have like a really popular lineup and you can just make a 2v2 where you get from Brunson up to Holiday and then you go from somebody down to somebody else that projects similarly, like that's a good move in that one lineup. But like it's not a spot. I'm not going into the slate saying like, oh yeah, I think the edge is playing Drew Holiday over Jalen Brunson because I don't think that it is. But 1.2 DraftKings points per minute this season for Drew without Middleton and with Giannis. Similarly, Brook Lopez, $300 more expensive than Thomas Bryant. I think Thomas Bryant is the better play. He projects better. He's cheaper, but he's not 10 times better than Brook Lopez. So in a given lineup, if you're just like, shit, like I really like this lineup and everybody's, 20 something, 30% owned, swap in that lineup, swap Thomas Bryant to Brook Lopez if you have $300 and, you're good. You have this 3% owned Brook Lopez. He beats Thomas Bryant. You're golden. So it's guys on Milwaukee that look good individually. They just don't look as good as other options at their positions or price range. Does give you the opportunity in tournaments, in individual lineups to make some pivots to those guys.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time to talk about a super chat from Jorge, a $10 super chat. Thank you to him. Click that like button for us. And also, what would you do if we get lineups with Gabriel, Thomas, Allen, and Pat on the same lineup? Would you create a rule to only get 2 of these guys and avoid having the 4 of them in the same lineup?
I'm confused. First, who is Thomas? Is that Bryant?
I'm assuming it is Thomas Bryant. Yeah.
And I'm not sure why those 4 are grouped together because Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton have nothing to do with Gabriel and Thomas Bryant.
Yeah, maybe it's just like if you get all 4 of them, it's because they're sharing the floor. Like Allen and Pat Connaughton are sharing the floor, and Gabriel and
I guess that's what he's saying is like you have 2 pairs of guys that sort of negatively correlate. I'm not setting that rule because I just can't imagine I'm building many lineups that have Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton and Wenyen Gabriel. But yeah, I think it's fine. Like you should still view them individually. Like if you're willing to play Thomas Bryant and Wenyen Gabriel together, I don't think there's any reason that like you shouldn't do it if you have Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton because like it has no impact there. So I guess no, I'm not setting that rule. I also probably won't have that if any lineups that have all 4 of those guys.
Yeah, no, I haven't built lineups, so maybe those are the type of builds that are coming up. So I'll have to take a look. Have you made any builds yet?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm it's something to do after the show, but we'll see what those builds look like. Any final thoughts on Milwaukee before we move on to Boston?
So this doesn't have to do with Milwaukee, but it's just easier than typing in chat. SMP had a good thought. He said another interesting nugget. Dwight Powell picked up 5 fouls last game and still closed and played 19 minutes. So Kidd might be trending towards scaling Wood's minutes back. Wood did close. Wood closed, but I do agree. Like the rotations we saw last game very much were, I think, partly influenced by Wood having some early foul trouble, but also kind of screamed like Jason Kidd's watched Christian Wood play 30 plus minutes 2 games in a row and he can't take it anymore. So again, like I'm not as bullish on Wood's minutes here. I think going to like a 30-minute projection makes sense, but I do still think if he's playing well, you have that upside. Similarly, though, if Wood's playing like shit, you could definitely get that 22-minute Dwight Powell game. Like I agree that the rotations in general just kind of looked like Jason Kidd still just does not want to play Christian Wood as much as he could.
There's a follow-up from Jorge asking because those 4 of them guys are not good fantasy guys and don't have a great ceiling. Just wondering any thoughts of having 4 of them in a lineup with Luka. Yeah. Merry Christmas.
So I mean, Thomas Bryant has a ceiling, so I wouldn't include him there. But the way I think about it is just I'm not setting I don't go in and set rules like that because what happens, like to avoid that, because what happens is you end up unintentionally, there's just like unintended consequences, right? If you go in and you say like, you create a group and say, max two of, and pick like every shitty play like Wenyen Gabriel and Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen, you're just gonna get you're not gonna get necessarily the best lineups. Like you're kind of like jumping a step in the process, right? Because the whole point of like using an optimizer is that it shows you what your best projected lineups are. And if you're using randomness or something, you're in effect that you're using that to like then impact your lineups to say, okay, well, like some of these guys have different ceilings than others, and there's different volatility and all of that. If you're still getting lineups where it's just saying like, look, the best you can do is having Gabriel and Connaughton and Allen, then that's probably the best you can do. And if you set a group saying like I only want two of those guys, then it's just going to start forcing you lineups where like you get less Luka and you get more balanced lineups, which could be fine. But for me, I would rather trust my projections, trust all the data I'm putting in, and say like, look, if like I don't like having Wenyen Gabriel and Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen, but if the numbers I'm putting in don't say that they're good either. So like if the numbers that say they're shitty are still making me get them because Luka's that good, then I'm going to just still roll with Luka. So that's kind of the way I think about it. I try not to set groups like that just because it ends up having unintended consequences on the lineups that I'm going to get.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great breakdown of that. And I think hopefully, Jorge, that took care of your confusion. And I appreciate the follow up and Merry Christmas to you as well. Click that like button for us. And also, we have an exciting BetMGM offer where you can get 2 months of Stokastic plus Platinum. Just go to the link in the description. Take advantage of this. It's a limited time, free $25 risks-free bet. There's a link right here in the description. It's going to go away. And if I were you, I would take advantage of it today. Bet on some NBA games. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM, don't miss out on that. On to Boston we go, and it's Jason Tatum's Jason Tatum's show. Jaylen Brown, 10-4 here and $8,800. Man, these guys are priced up, and they're not getting as much ownership than usual. But Tatum and Brown is kind of the lead show here. Marcus Smart's expected to play, comes in at $6,100. This is a great tournament team, so I think it's definitely worth taking some flyers here across the board. But then we get the front court situation with Al Horford and Robert Williams returning here. Talk to me about the Celtics team and especially the front court situation. That minutes breakdown has been very fluid of late. What do you expect to happen in this Milwaukee matchup?
So I think you're still getting 31, 32 minutes from Al Horford if he avoids foul trouble. We know Boston likes to use him, or I mean, different coaching staff, obviously, but Boston in the past has liked to use him in this Giannis matchup. He's been effective. And we haven't really seen Robert Williams cut into Horford's playing time anyway, because we've seen them play minutes alongside each other. They certainly can do that here against Milwaukee, where essentially you have two centers on the floor with one of Lopez Portis and then Giannis, or Lopez and Portis alongside each other, whatever it may be. So I expect them to play minutes alongside each other. Al Horford at 5K, I think is a pretty interesting piece if he's going to play like 30 to 32 minutes. He is projected for 20% ownership. I get it. Power forward eligibility makes him easy to get to as well. Robert Williams getting 13% ownership is interesting. I think he probably plays around 20 minutes. He's a good point per minute guy. He's only 4,300. A lot of slates, you would just ignore that. But here I do think the ownership's reasonable. So both of those guys are interesting to me. Again, I think you can play them alongside each other just because they are going to play alongside each other in the actual game, and it is a 5-game slate with relatively limited value. So I think they're both interesting. I think Horford's certainly the one that I would get to first. And I agree with you. This is a very interesting tournament team, just like Milwaukee is on the other side, because for the most part, they're correctly priced. And so you are just getting pretty modest ownership everywhere. 6% coming to Tatum, 9% coming to Brown, 8% coming to Brogdon. And they are all relatively low probability plays, but they are also projected to go a little bit under-owned. 7% chance of being optimal for Tatum, 10% for Brown, 14% for Brogdon. So they all just make for pretty solid pivots in tournaments. Marcus Smart at 6,100 and Derek White at 4,200, both 10 to 14% owned, look like reasonable plays also. So it's just one of those teams where I don't expect that I'm just like jamming in any one of these guys, but I do think that pretty much all of them make for good tournament plays.
Agreed. And I have really not much anything to else add here. Worth taking some getting above the field on a couple of these Boston guys, in my opinion. On to the Memphis and Grizzlies. The Memphis and Warriors matchup we go. This is another rematch of the semifinals where there's a little back and forth between these two teams in the offseason after Golden State won the ring. Klay Thompson called Jaren Jackson a bum. He might be right about that. I'm not too sure. John Morant comes in at 10-6. Desmond Bane has returned here, then which definitely changes things up for this team. But it's the starters here: Morant, Bane, Triple J, and Dylan Brooks and Adams in this Golden State matchup, where it's a very shorthanded Golden State team. They should boat race this team. And obviously, there's a lot of ways these guys can pay off their salary. My preference is I actually like going to Triple J at 6,600. If he can stay out of foul trouble, I really like taking advantage of that price tag and kind of the bum narrative. But everyone else, Desmond Bane coming back kind of ruins it for John Morant's elevated price tag at 10-6, as does it for Dylan Brooks. And it kind of makes them solid tournament options, but nothing too exciting. How do you feel about this Grizzlies team? I like going to them, but with Desmond Bane returning, it has changed the sentiment from that I've had for this team as long as he was out for.
Yeah, and Bane played 24 and a half minutes last game, so I would expect you're getting a few more minutes here. It makes John Morant tough to get to. Certainly can still play him in tournaments. It's John Morant. He's fantastic. He's in a good spot, all of that. 9% ownership, just add him to the list of Jason Tatum type guys that are really, really good and getting 10% ownership. I like the front court here. You mentioned Jaren Jackson at 6,600. I think that the upside he gives you is really appealing. You should get 27, 28 minutes as long as he avoids foul trouble. Usage comes down a bit with Bane back, but you just get that block upside from him that adds so much volatility and gives him a really high ceiling. I also like the centers. 5,100 Steven Adams and $4,400 Brandon Clark. It's kind of hard to think that one of those guys doesn't have a big game. Kind of your guess is as good as mine which one it is, but I think a lot's going to depend on how the game goes. But Steven Adams at 5,100, if this game is somehow competitive, granted it is in Golden State, like it's only a 6-point spread. This game has the same spread as the Boston Milwaukee game that we were just talking about being, an appealing game. So I don't want to get too carried away with, this being a blowout, even though Memphis is clearly so much better than Golden State. But if this is a competitive game, you're talking 28, 29 minutes from Steven Adams at 5,100, just grabbing rebound after rebound after rebound against this Golden State front court. If Steven Adams gets in foul trouble or this is not a competitive game, you're getting a $4,400 Brandon Clark playing 20 plus minutes with power forward eligibility and torching Golden State most likely. So 11% ownership coming in to Clark, 18% to Adams. I like both of these guys. I would not play them together because they will not share the floor. But Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, I like both individually in tournaments. I like getting there. Ownership looks very good to me. Dylan Brooks at 6K, reasonable price tag. You're just hoping that he makes his shots. Probably won't, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah, no, I think this team. I missed the 6-point spread. Yeah, then that's definitely eye catching, and kind of shocked to see that spread. Honestly, this Memphis team is far superior than the Golden State team that's being rolled out today.
6 points on the road though, so it's a 9-point, neutral floor spread.
Yeah, it's I still think they should be favored by a little bit more. This is makes for a great appealing tournament team across the board. I definitely think I like the front court situation you brought up there. Certainly one of those guys can be good. Can we go to Desmond Bane? I don't think the minutes are enough. He was someone that was paying off this price tag consistently. 7,100 on FanDuel, I'm willing to take some chances there, but 78 on DraftKings seems a little too steep.
Yeah, it seems tough. I mean, he's so good and in a good matchup that, like, if you told me he played 28 minutes and he's 2% owned, it's mildly interesting. The thing I come back to, though, is just that, like, you can play Drew Holiday, who's going to play full minutes at 8 or not, 10% owned. I would just rather go there. Like, I think the gap from like getting to a Drew Holiday type guy or similar plays like that, going from like 10% to 2% isn't really worth it when you do expect Bane to be limited here. It just certainly does cap his ceiling even if he does play really well. So he's just a little more expensive than I want to take a chance on. I could see it maybe on FanDuel.
Yeah, no, in the minutes, I think ceiling seems like mid 30s for all things put together, in my opinion. While Drew Holiday could certainly play 40 minutes, as can Jalen Brunson in that price range. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that situation here. Uh, any final thoughts on this Grizzlies team before we move on to Golden State?
No, although I would rather not move on to Golden State.
Well, here we are with Golden State as they remain out without Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins. JaMychal Green, I believe, is still in COVID protocols. So that's going to put Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson, the head usage guys, on this team. Jordan Poole is going to come in at 8,300 on both sites. Certainly going to get some decent amount of ownership here. I like going to Poole as he's eating up pretty much most of Curry's usage. I don't mind also going to Klay at 7,100 where you get that 3-point bonus. I definitely think he's worth a great tournament flyer here. In this Golden State team, as they're missing some guys, we've seen DiVincenzo play a lot of minutes, Draymond Green and Kuminga and Looney. Wiseman's been playing a lot of blowout run of late. How do we attack this Golden State team? Because it's going to be gross, but I certainly think one of these guys at their price tag, if this game is going to somehow stay close, they should be around paying off a pretty low salary potentially. And with the guy like Curry missing, there should be shots available if Poole doesn't take all of them.
Yeah, I mean, he will. But 8,300 for Poole, 17% ownership. I think he looks good. It's really just, can he knock down shots? Because you know that he's going to take them. He's played 4 games now without Curry and with Klay. 37.2% usage rate. So took Curry's usage plus some of his, kept some of his own. 1.29 DraftKings points per minute. Having Klay back should take some defensive attention off of Poole, which is nice. But I love the ceiling that Poole offers. Thompson at 7,100, getting 14% ownership looks pretty good as well. He doesn't get a bump in usage here because, again, Jordan Poole just takes all of it. But you're still talking about a 26.5% usage rate for Klay. Certainly can just get hot and look pretty good at 7,100. Draymond is questionable, but if he's good to go, you have seen a lot of playing time from him at 5,800. I think he is sort of like a last piece in. He's like the $5,800 version of RJ Barrett for me, where I'm never feeling good about looking at my Draymond lineups, but if you're going to get 34 to 36 minutes from him, it's going to be pretty appealing. And then you get to the front court where, like you said, no JaMychal Green. Kevon Looney could certainly play increased minutes here at 5,100. I prefer getting the Steven Adams out of the two, but 9% ownership or 10% ownership coming to Looney certainly could play a little bit more. Wiseman's getting 22% ownership. That really scares me. So he's 3,400. I get the ownership in the sense that he's a pretty good point per minute guy, and if he were to just play all of the backup minutes to Kevon Looney, then he would look really good. My issue is that I'm not sure that's going to happen because not only do we have Klay Thompson back now after missing last game, but you have Donte DiVincenzo back as well. And so if Draymond is in, you can very, very easily get Jonathan Kuminga taking some of those backup center minutes. And you get a situation where, let's say Kevon Looney plays 26, Weissman only plays 16, 14, 16. Kuminga plays the rest of the center minutes. Or Wiseman plays even less and Kuminga plays all the backup center minutes. Like, you can have those things happen. I think the most likely case is that you do get around 14, 16 minutes from Wiseman, which makes him look decent, but also getting a lot of ownership there. So kind of a similar play to Isaiah Hartenstein that we talked about at the beginning. Donte DiVincenzo pulling 13% ownership at 6,400. He should play 34 to 36 minutes. He's not a great point per minute guy, but with that, positional eligibility could just be a pretty useful piece to round out lineups. He has averaged a fantasy point per minute in the 3 games he's played without Curry and with Klay and Poole in 32 minutes per game. I expect that to come down a bit, but certainly a decent last piece in.
Yeah, no, I think Wiseman's going to be very intriguing here potentially for me. I don't mind taking some chances on him. We'll see if that ownership holds up, though. That's a hefty ownership and opportunity cost at center when guys like Embiid and Jokic are on the slate. Kind of difficult to go there in confidence. I think guys like DiVincenzo is too expensive on DraftKings 6,400. But are you willing to take some chances on a guy like him? It's sticker shock for DiVincenzo for me.
I think that he's still, it's just the positional eligibility. When I look at, last night when I'm putting in a dummy lineup, I'm scrolling through and I'm just like, all right, DiVincenzo's, 6,200. I'm good. But I think it's just likely to be once I start building lineups, it's just okay, whatever. I'm getting 15% because I can play him at guard. I can play him at forward. Overall this year, he's at 0.86 DraftKings points per minute. He's likely to play mid 30s. So I think he just sort of is the last piece in. I think the ownership makes sense.
No, agreed here. All right, on to the final game of the night, the late night hammer between Phoenix and Denver. Click that like button for us. and that subscribe button for us as we wrap up this Christmas Day NBA slate. We appreciate you, all of you guys who are joining us today, and Merry Christmas to you guys if you're just joining us right now. But it's Devin Booker returning for this team. Last time Devin Booker played, he dropped a nice 58 piece, and him coming back, he's their lead dog and kind of ruins the Chris Paul chalk that we were riding over the last week or so. And DeAndre Ayton's usage should bump down. It just affects everyone else. It's kind of a trickle down effect, and it really helps Booker being back. Booker comes in at 9.5 and 9K, and he makes for a solid tournament option. I like getting above the field with a guy like him. I just think he's like playing so well of late. I like taking some chances on Booker. This whole team is going to come in pretty low owned in a Denver spot. I like going to Booker and really nobody else. I can't go to any of those bench guys in confidence because they were just splitting those minutes up. Guys like Shamet, Okogie, Damian Lee. Now Booker coming back. I expect him to play at least 30 minutes, if not more. We haven't projected at 33 minutes, and that seems like a solid minutes projection for him. I like going to Booker. He's by far my favorite son to go to. How about you?
Yeah, I like the idea of getting the Booker because he's 8% owned. I think there's a decent chance he just plays full run here. I don't necessarily think that that's a guarantee, but it shouldn't surprise anybody if he does. The problem I'm going to have, though, is just like it's going to be really, really tough, I think, to make Luka plus Booker lineups, and Luka's a bigger priority for me. Like, if you click Luka in on DraftKings, you have $5,357 per position left. If you put Booker in after that, you're down to $4,600. So that's probably going to be the issue, is it just becomes difficult for me to get there. But I do like the upside that he offers. Solid matchup here against a Denver team that can struggle defensively. I'm still interested in DeAndre Ayton. You get a little bit of a decrease in usage with Booker being back, but if he can avoid foul trouble here, he should play 30 plus minutes. He's getting 8% ownership at a reasonable price tag. So, I think another solid tournament option. Chris Paul at 8,400 also sees a drop in production with Booker back. Don't sleep on Cameron Payne being out though, because that does give you minutes still for Chris Paul. You can go from like a 32-minute projection up to around 34 or 35. Certainly not any sort of a priority here. Those rates do come down with Booker, but from a tournament standpoint, any of those guys look fine. None of them look like priorities, and I don't really think I get to much of anything else. Mikal Bridges, just because he is a small forward and should still play like 37, 38 minutes, maybe just falls in the lineups here and there, but nothing from Phoenix really looks very good because you saw prices elevate, and then now you have Devin Booker back.
Yeah, no, I think I like Booker quite a bit the more and more I think about it, and not so much on the other guys, the way they're priced right now, because they're kind of priced for Booker to be out. But it's going to be an interesting ownership thing. I think that are going to come in pretty low owned by the time this game starts. But onto the Denver side we go. Nikola Jokic, 12K and 12.2 on DraftKings and FanDuel respectively. Michael Porter has returned here. And Jamal Murray's been playing full minutes pretty much for consistently over the past week, as those minutes are now consistently in the mid 30s, it seems like. With Porter coming back, it definitely hurt Bruce Brown the most, in my opinion, but he takes away a little bit of usage from everyone else on this team. Against this Phoenix spot, obviously you're going to have interest in Nikola Jokic. He's outstanding. He can definitely put up a massive number. But with Porter coming back, I think the usage is a little bit lower than it can be. But Jamal Murray also coming at 6,907K. A lot of this Denver team is priced appropriately in a Phoenix spot. I like sprinkling them in, but they're getting some ownership where I think maybe I should be looking to get a little bit more than I initially thought. How do you feel about this Denver team in this Phoenix spot?
Yeah, it's just another team where Porter coming back sort of just makes this team correctly priced, but there is still a ton of upside here. You're getting, very solid playing time from these guys. This game is as likely as any to be competitive, a 3-point spread here. So that's pretty appealing. You have 22% ownership coming into Murray. He's only 6,900. I think he's for sure the guy that I get to first here, coming off of a game where he just played 39 minutes as well. Certainly can't project that, but you can pretty comfortably be going to that 34, 35-minute range on Jamal Murray at this point. He's averaged a little over a fantasy point per minute in the games with Michael Porter Jr. and Jokic this year. But also keep in mind, most of those games definitely skew towards earlier in the season when Murray was still shaking off rust and working his way back. So I think you probably see him look a little bit better going forward than he had to this point. Jokic, 1.6 DraftKings points per minute in the games where Porter and Murray have been in. He played another 36 minutes last game. You've seen his playing time ramp up. Again, I'm going to get to Luka first, but clearly nothing wrong with getting to Jokic. Michael Porter Jr. is interesting. He played 27 minutes last game in his first game back. We had Michael Malone say he's going to be limited and imply he was coming off the bench. Michael Porter Jr. followed that up by saying, I'm not going to be limited and I'm starting. Michael Porter Jr. started, played 27 minutes. In the first half, he played about 19 minutes. Like, I think you very realistically could get 30 minutes from Michael Porter Jr. here. And we've been talking about how there's all these small forwards that aren't really that appealing, but they just sort of land in your lineups because of the position, whether, that is DiVincenzo or Barrett or Mikal Bridges. Michael Porter Jr. pulling 11% ownership. If he gets to like 30 minutes here, I like the upside that he offers in the games that he's played with Murray and Jokic. He's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute in 29 minutes per game. So I think that's, a pretty interesting spot to go to in tournaments as well, hoping that he picks up a few more minutes because he didn't close that last game. He left with 6.5 minutes to go. So there's certainly minutes available for him to play if they're willing to give them to him.
Yeah, it's always a tricky situation with Michael Porter Jr. Malone obviously doesn't trust his defense, and I think he's an amazing offensive talent where the 3-point bonus on DraftKings, I think at 5,900 certainly could work out for him. Do you want to take any flyers on guys like Bones Highland, Bruce Brown, KCP? As this rotation shares out, remember, Jeff Green is also out, and I think those minutes probably go to Christian Braun and Zeke Naji and Vlatko Konkar. I don't think it's all that necessary to take flyers on those guys, but their Jeff Green minutes are not. He is out today with a broken wrist or broken finger. He's out for a month. Those minutes will, I think, get split up among those guys. Is it worth taking in a flyer on any of those bench pieces?
KCP just should play solid minutes. He's 4,600. He's KCP, but he's somebody that I think he's pulling 10% ownership. That looks fine. As far as the bench pieces, Bruce Brown at 5,800 is just a little bit more expensive than I would like. He is getting no ownership though, and he is sort of their jack of all trades, where he just plays every position 1 through 4. So you could certainly see more playing time from him. A little bit more playing time from him with Jeff Green out, and he did close the last game over Michael Porter Jr. as well, playing 27 minutes. There's going to be games where Brown just, finds his way into the closing rotation, whether it's over Porter or KCP or Gordon anyway. So, there's a path to 30 minutes for him. It's a low probability play, but there's at least a path there. Bones Highland at 4,900, kind of similar to Quickly, except I think a worse version because Quickly you can just project for a couple more minutes than Highland. But I agree with you as far as the Jeff Green minutes. Most likely just going to go to Christian Braun, maybe a little bit of Chanchar, but I expect you just get Christian Braun back in the rotation.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for breaking that down. But before I leave everyone else out, I want one final question for you. Can you rank your studs on this Christmas Day slate for me?
Luka. Jokic, Giannis.
Okay. I'm a little more bearish on Luka than you are, but I completely understand the Luka sentiment that you have today. It should be an exciting Christmas Day slate. If everyone can hit that like button for us, NFL Deeper Dive, NFL Live before Lock next. Take advantage of that content. Thank you so much for joining us. Merry Christmas, everybody.